Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a story that's a little bit crazy, a little bit heartbreaking, and a whole lot of unexpected. It's a story about friendship, marriage, and how life can throw some curveballs you never see coming. Let's rewind a bit. Back in college, my best friend Isaac and I were roommates. I was the business-minded guy, always dreaming of big deals, while Isaac was the serious, dedicated accounting whiz. He never really dated much, and asking a girl out was, as he put it, the hardest test ever. Then Elizabeth came along. She was smart, witty, and she had this way of just captivating everyone. Isaac was instantly smitten. He tried hanging out with her more, studying together, working on projects, but he was too scared to make a move. I kept urging him to ask her out, but he always hesitated, saying, if I mess this up, I might lose her as a study buddy. I knew he was just making excuses because he was afraid of rejection. So I had an idea. Elizabeth lives in the dorms, right? She must have a roommate. Isaac was hesitant, but after some convincing, he finally asked Elizabeth and her roommate, Kate, out for dinner and drinks on a Friday night. It was amazing. Elizabeth was intelligent and beautiful, while Kate was like the kind of girl next door you always secretly admire, sweet, down to earth, and instantly made you feel comfortable. We clicked as a group. From simple dinners, we started doing more things together. Movies, bowling, weekend trips, just hanging out on Friday nights. We were inseparable. And Isaac, even though he'd initially had his eyes on Elizabeth, started to feel a connection with Kate. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and I had this undeniable chemistry. We shared the same values, the same perspectives on life. It was like we were two halves of the same whole. After graduation, life took us down different paths, but we stayed close. We found a great apartment building near the city center with two two-bedroom apartments just a few floors apart. Elizabeth and Kate snagged one, and Isaac and I got the other. This arrangement didn't last long. Isaac and Elizabeth were practically living in Kate and Elizabeth's apartment, while Kate and I were constantly in my apartment with Isaac. It happened so naturally that we decided to simplify things by swapping leases. Elizabeth moved in with me, and Isaac moved in with Kate. It wasn't a rushed decision. It was the outcome of months of sharing spaces, dreams, and lives. We did almost everything together. Dinners, events, weekend getaways. Our 4-person trip to Jamaica was a defining moment. I proposed to Elizabeth, and shortly after, Isaac got down on one knee in front of Kate. Needless to say, both proposals were met with joyful screams and tears. We had 2 weddings, a week apart, followed by a joint honeymoon in Hawaii. Hawaii was amazing, but I started feeling a bit uneasy. I noticed Elizabeth and Isaac sharing private moments while Kate and I were doing group activities. Elizabeth and I had unforgettable moments walking along the beach at midnight, listening to the waves crash and talking about our dreams for the future, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. Our goals were pretty much the same: work hard for 4 or 5 years, save up enough for a house, and start families. We talked about this all the time, usually over wine on weekends, discussing our plans for the future. Things seemed perfect until Wednesday morning, after our anniversary celebration. Because of COVID, Isaac, Elizabeth, and I had been working from home 2 days a week. Wednesday morning, while making the bed, I saw something under the bed. It was a shiny silver coin, a silver dollar, the last one Isaac's grandpa had given him, a priceless heirloom. How could Isaac's coin be here? I wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the fact was, Isaac rarely ever parted with that coin. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the coin, and a feeling of unease started creeping into my mind. A million theories started racing through my head, but I didn't want to think the worst. I tried to reassure myself that there was a logical explanation, but no matter how hard I tried, my suspicions grew stronger. A coin doesn't just appear out of thin air. And one thing I knew for sure, Isaac never lost this heirloom unless something significant had happened. I sat there, the cold coin in my hand, feeling a vague anxiety slowly morph into fear. Had something happened between Isaac and Elizabeth that I didn't know about? And if so, was this coin proof? I walked to our home office and told myself to stop letting my mind wander. I hid the coin in a drawer of my desk so Elizabeth wouldn't see it. My first call was to my manager, Sherry. Sherry is an amazing woman, always open and easy to talk to. She's about 10 years older than me, married to a car mechanic, and has 3 little girls. Sherry also works from home on Wednesdays and Thursdays, just like me. Sherry tilted her head slightly and looked at me through the call. So if they wanted to do something they shouldn't be doing, Tuesday was their chance. And you don't want to ask Elizabeth because that might make her think you don't trust her. Sherry nodded, like it was all perfectly obvious. Is there any way to check if they did anything inappropriate on Tuesday? She suddenly got an idea. My husband used to have problems with one of his guys stealing parts from his auto shop. He bought a tiny little battery-operated camera that was super easy to hide. You want me to see if he still has it? For the first time that day, I felt a sense of relief. That would be awesome, I said. If he has it, it'll give me peace of mind. If not, I can just buy one when we go to the office on Friday. With a plan in place, we focused on work for the day. I tried my best to keep the image of the coin out of my head, and when evening came, I tried to be as normal as possible around Elizabeth. She didn't seem to notice anything different, so we carried on with our evening as usual. So on Friday, Sherry brought the camera to the office for me as promised. It was truly tiny and easy to hide. I felt a bit guilty for doing this, but my suspicions had grown to the point where I needed to know the truth, no matter what. My chance came when I had to visit my dad on Saturday. He'd called earlier in the week and asked me to help him clean out his attic and move some heavy furniture. This gave me the perfect excuse to be away from home all day. On Friday night, I tried to stay as normal as possible. While Elizabeth was in the bathroom before bed, I quickly pulled the camera out of my bag, set the angle, and hid it behind the fake Hawaiian lei she had kept from our honeymoon. The lei was hanging on the wall opposite the bed, and with its vibrant colors, the tiny camera was practically invisible. I had to get up early on Saturday to see my dad, so I could easily avoid the night Friday passions. Saturday morning, I packed up quietly and got ready to leave. Elizabeth was still fast asleep, curled under the covers. I kissed her forehead like I always did and whispered, "I'm leaving. Love you." She sleepily opened her eyes, smiled tiredly, and mumbled, "Drive safe, I love you." I stepped out of the apartment with a heavy feeling in my chest, not just because of the truth I might uncover, but also because of the guilt of spying on the woman I loved. But the doubt was there, and I had to confront it. Driving to my dad's, I tried to keep my mind from spiraling into negative thoughts. But no matter how hard I tried, the unease lingered. My dad picked me up at the bus stop, his face beaming its usual warm smile. He had a full day planned for us. His house was large, with an attic filled with decades of belongings and memories. We spent the whole day going through old stuff. There were boxes full of childhood memorabilia, model airplanes, scribbled drawings, even faded old comic books. My dad carefully sorted everything, dividing it into 3 piles: keep, donate, and discard. But as I sat on the bus ride home, the worry returned. I was afraid of what I might see on a camera SD card, afraid that my suspicions might be confirmed. I arrived home late. Elizabeth was waiting for me, and we decided to order pizza for dinner because we were both too tired to cook. While we waited for the delivery, I went into the bathroom to shower, trying to wash away the dust and heaviness from the long day. I looked around the bedroom, trying to spot any signs of anything out of place. But there was nothing. Everything seemed to be exactly where it should be. That made me even more uneasy, like this normalcy was a facade. That night, I faked a headache and went to bed early, hoping Elizabeth wouldn't notice anything different in my behavior. I needed to stay calm and wait until Sunday morning. Sunday morning, when Elizabeth said she was going shopping with Kate, I felt a little relieved. This was my chance to have some privacy to check the camera without interruption. The apartment felt oddly empty as I closed the door behind Elizabeth. I grabbed the camera and pulled out the SD card, plugging it into my computer. My heart pounded, heavy like the ticking of a clock. I copied all the video files onto my computer and started watching. The camera was set to record whenever it detected movement. The first clip showed us going to bed on Friday night, then me waking up early on Saturday morning and leaving. Nothing unusual until then. Kate usually starts work at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, which meant she would be leaving the apartment in the morning. Then the moment I'd been dreading happened. According to the timestamp just before 9 a.m., Elizabeth woke up. I couldn't hear the audio, so I didn't know what caused her to stir. Then Isaac came into the camera's view. They paused, looking at each other for a moment. Then they kissed, passionately, before starting to undress and get into bed. I don't need to describe the details, but what I saw made me feel numb. Isaac, my best friend, and Elizabeth, my wife whom I had utterly trusted, were having sex in our bed. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen, but I also couldn't accept what I was seeing. I scrolled through the video, my mind nearly numb. By the end, I saw them going into the bathroom together, then coming out, towels wrapped around them. The last shot was of Elizabeth stripping the bedsheets. She put them in a laundry basket, and I knew she must have washed them before putting them back on. It was all calculated, like they had done this many times before. It felt like a migraine was coming on, a pain I had never experienced before. I quickly backed up the incriminating video to the cloud and to my personal drive at work. I also carefully printed out a few screenshots and tucked them between papers in my laptop bag. I put the SD card back in the camera and replaced the batteries. I still wanted to see if anything happened on Tuesday. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I needed to know the whole truth. I knew Elizabeth would be back soon from shopping with Kate, so I had to play my part carefully. My migraine medication, which my doctor had prescribed, came in a blister pack. I took 2 pills, flushed them down the toilet, and left the rest of the blister pack on the nightstand next to my bed, along with a nearly empty glass of water. Then I put on my eye mask, the one I normally use to block light when migraines hit. I lay down on the bed, adjusting my position to look natural, and listened for any sound of Elizabeth's return. The bedroom door creaked open, and I heard soft footsteps. Elizabeth saw me lying there with my eye mask and softly asked, "Another migraine?" Her voice was gentle, like she genuinely cared about me. I simply replied, "Yeah, but it's okay. Go have dinner at Isaac and Kate's. Don't worry about me." She came closer and kissed my forehead lightly, whispering, "I'm sorry. Call me if you need anything." Then she left, saying she would help Kate get dinner ready. I stayed in bed, pretending to be asleep, but my mind was a whirlwind. Those images from the video kept replaying in my head over and over, like a horror movie with no ending. Part of me wanted to scream, to rush over to Isaac and Kate's right then and demand everything I'd lost back, but I knew I had to control myself. As I lay there, a memory flashed through my mind of a divorce lawyer in my office building. He was known as one of the nastiest lawyers, always looking to capitalize on clients' misery. I remembered one morning when he was standing by the elevator, handing out cards saying most marriages end in divorce. Back then, I just smiled and thought I was lucky to be avoiding that situation. But now, his words echoed ominously. Elizabeth and I didn't have kids, and our only shared asset was our joint savings for a house. The split wouldn't be complicated. But divorce wasn't the only problem. What I really wanted was to make sure Elizabeth's relationship with Isaac ended too. I couldn't let them continue as if nothing had happened. And besides, Kate deserved to know the truth. An idea popped into my head, and I realized I had to talk to Sherry. She was a good listener, and she always gave wise advice. Sherry had seen and heard heartbreaking stories at the company for years, and she had a realistic perspective. I fell asleep before Elizabeth came back that night. When I woke up in the morning, I stretched and pretended like the migraine was gone. I gave her a reassuring smile when she asked how I was feeling. "I'm all right," I said. "Maybe I just need a good night's sleep." Before leaving, I kissed Elizabeth goodbye as usual and wished her a good day at work. Everything seemed back to normal, but I knew it was just a facade. I stepped out of the apartment with a determination brewing inside, and a plan slowly forming in my mind. When I arrived at work that morning, Sherry was waiting for me outside my office door. She didn't need to say anything, she just motioned for me to follow her into her office. She closed the door behind her, creating a quiet, private space, something I desperately needed at that moment. Sherry turned to me, her expression gentle but strained. "How did it go?" she asked softly. I couldn't hold back anymore. As soon as she uttered those words, all the pent-up emotions from the weekend exploded. I sank into a chair and started to sob, unable to hold back the tears of anger, hurt, and pain. Sherry just stood there, silent, letting me release everything. She knew the answers I couldn't articulate. "What are you going to do now?" she asked after a while when I had somewhat calmed down. "Divorce is the only way forward," I said, my voice choked but firm. "I can't trust her anymore." Sherry walked over and gave me a gentle hug, wordless, just presence and understanding. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice full of empathy. "I know there's a divorce lawyer in the building. He's notoriously ruthless, but I think he's the guy I need right now. Elizabeth and I don't have major assets besides the joint bank account and no children. So the split should be pretty straightforward, I explained. But there was something more important that I needed Sherry's help with. What do you need me to do? She asked, ready to help. I need to make sure that if my relationship with Elizabeth ends, then Isaac's relationship with her ends too, I said, my voice cold. Sherry stared at me, pensive, waiting for an explanation. You still do that little theater thing you mentioned, right? I asked, trying to find leverage through that connection. She nodded. Yeah, I still do. You want one of the actresses to help. Yeah, I said, and I started to describe my plan. It was simple, but it required finesse and a bit of acting to bring things to a close. When she finished, Sherry smiled, a mischievous smile I had never seen on her before. I can do better than that for you, she said. I'll do it. I work Wednesdays, and I'll make sure it happens just right. Elizabeth only knows me from a few passing interactions, and in the play I'm in, I wear a blonde wig. I looked up at Sherry, surprised and relieved. She had naturally brown hair, but that small change would mask her identity when needed. She thought ahead of me, quickly and subtly. Just bring the coin tomorrow, she added, and then we'll be ready. I breathed a sigh of relief, a flicker of hope in the darkness. My life was turned upside down, but at least, with Sherry's help, I had a chance to regain some control. Thank you, Sam, I said, trying to hide the emotion in my voice. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sherry just shook her head and patted my shoulder. We'll get through this, Jim, and you'll come out stronger. After leaving Sherry's office, I felt a little clearer, just enough to take the next step. I took the elevator down to the ground floor and went over to the building directory. Scanning the names along the columns of mailboxes, I found the office of the lawyer I'd remembered. It was on the third floor, one of the nondescript older offices. I walked up to the receptionist and spoke to the secretary, a guy who seemed tired but was quick on the job. I was lucky to get a late afternoon appointment, so I went back to my office to keep working until it was time. At the appointed hour, I returned to the lawyer's office. As I stepped in, I noticed a stark contrast between the receptionist area and the lawyer's main office space. His office was beautiful and tastefully decorated, a complete turnaround from the drab exterior. He stood up as I entered, greeting me with a professional smile. Well, if you're coming to see me, I'm guessing you're having some marital troubles, he said with a calm, familiar voice. That's right, my wife is having an affair, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you have any proof? He asked, his eyes looking at me expectantly. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the printed screenshots from the video. I handed them to him, trying not to let my hands tremble. Oh, he muttered after looking through the photos. He looked up at me with eyes that had seen countless cases like this. Do you know who the man in the pictures is? My best friend, I said, my voice dry. Damn, he blurted out, shaking his head. That's worse. Sorry, but it's usually easier when it's someone you don't know. In this situation, you've lost both your wife and your friend. So what do you want out of the divorce? The affair doesn't affect the settlement when it comes to the judge, he said matter-of-factly. I just want the assets split. We're renting and have no children. We just have furniture, our joint savings for the house, and our retirement funds. I don't care about the furniture. Just split the money and let her keep her retirement fund. I want mine, I said concisely. Fine, he said, nodding in agreement. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. After a moment, I heard his secretary pick up. Jill, can you bring me the 5050 adultery complaint form? He said into the phone. A few minutes later, Jill walked in holding a thick stack of papers. The lawyer smiled, explaining, I apologize, but legally, your situation is pretty straightforward. This is the standard divorce agreement for your case. I usually start from this form and add any adjustments we need, but I think this will cover most of it. I look it over and ask me to make any changes you need. And when do you want her served? Thursday at work, I said after a moment's thought. I wanted to shock her right where she least expected it. Okay, take this with Jill and settle up with her. Then we can go over everything. I need the final agreement by the end of Tuesday so I can have it delivered to her Thursday, he said, his voice professional and emotionless. I understand. I'll look it over this afternoon and get back to you tomorrow morning, I replied. Leaving the lawyer's office, I went back to work with my stack of papers. Sherry wanted to look over the divorce papers, so we sat together to review them. We read through each line in Word and found no issues. There was only one request I wanted to add, I wanted my grandmother's wedding ring back. It was a precious family heirloom, and I didn't want Elizabeth to keep it after everything. Sherry agreed that was a reasonable and straightforward request. Over the next few days, I tried to keep things as normal as possible with Elizabeth. I didn't want her to suspect anything. That night I went home and acted like nothing had changed. I smiled, asked about her day, and listened as she complained about problems at work. Luckily, because of work stress, Elizabeth was not in the mood for intimacy, which kept me from being overly affectionate. On Tuesday, I knew I needed to get everything in order before the truth came out. I went to the bank first thing in the morning and set up a separate account for myself. We had a joint bank account for shared expenses, but I wanted to protect my savings to avoid any disputes later on. At the bank, I took my time setting everything up carefully, trying not to show any signs of anxiety or urgency. The teller processed everything professionally and quickly. Once it was done, I felt a bit calmer, knowing my assets were separated and secure. Once I was done at the bank, I went back to the lawyer's office to sign all the final paperwork. The black and white papers on his desk represented the end of a chapter in my life, and the beginning of another, one filled with betrayal, loss, and determination. My lawyer went over all the details one last time before confirming everything was legally ready. "We'll serve her Thursday," he informed me with a stern, professional tone. The way he said serve made me feel like this was a battle, and in many ways, it probably was. "Thanks," I said succinctly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I want things to go smoothly because I don't know how she'll react." "Don't worry," the lawyer reassured me. "We've handled plenty of cases like this before. It'll be fine." As I left the lawyer's office, I noticed Sherry waiting to execute her part. Her performance was meticulously planned for Wednesday morning. We had discussed the timing to ensure a familiar meeting between Elizabeth and Isaac, and Sherry would play her part. Wednesday morning, after Elizabeth left, I checked the camera I had hidden, making sure my anxiety were not unfounded. They had a quick affair during their lunch break. In the video, I saw her change the bed sheets meticulously afterward, and based on her work habits, I guess she washed them while she continued working the afternoon shift. By now, I didn't need any more proof. I took down the camera and put it away safely. By Wednesday lunchtime, Sherry texted me, "It's done. I'll call you when I'm back at the office," followed by a laughing face emoji. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Sherry. "How'd it go?" I asked. "Probably the best performance of my life," she chuckled. "I even have an audio recording on my phone. I started recording before going into the restaurant and kept it in my purse. I'll play it for you now." As the recording started, I could hear the sounds of the restaurant, the chatter, and the click-clack of Sherry's heels on the wooden floor. Then her voice was clear and strong. "Isaac, there you are. I've been looking all over for you." Sherry explained to me that she played the part of a character she'd once acted in a play a few years back, a woman who loved to talk and never let anyone get a word in edgewise. I heard Isaac begin to say, "Excuse me, who are you?" but he was cut off instantly. "Oh, I forgot my phone at home, so I couldn't call ahead. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I'm off this Thursday for a scheduled meeting." "Hey, you must be Elizabeth. Isaac told me so much about you. Are you his third? These open marriages are so great, aren't they?" Her voice got more serious. "I have to tell you, one of my partners got a little case of chlamydia, so you should go to the doctor and get checked. Nothing serious, just some medicine and you're good to go." She went back to her normal tone. "Anyway, I have to run. Oh, Isaac, almost forgot, you left your lucky coin at my place last time. Here you go." Sherry stopped the playback, and I couldn't help but laugh. "You're amazing, perfect. What happened next?" I asked. Sherry laughed too, pleased with the results. I walked out of the restaurant, so I didn't hear what they near, but I took off my wig and watched from a distance. Just a few minutes later, Elizabeth stormed out of the restaurant, Isaac right behind her. She yelled at him, calling him a bastard and saying she never wanted to see him again. Isaac stammered that he didn't know who I was, but she clearly didn't believe him. "Perfect," I said, relieved that the performance went exactly as planned. Sherry shifted gears, becoming more concerned. "Now what are you going to do?" "Well, since you gave me the day off tomorrow, I already booked a hotel room. I didn't want to be home when everything blew up. She'll be served with the divorce papers late this afternoon, so I'll have all day to pack my things. I'll also transfer half of the savings to my separate account. Hopefully I can get out of the apartment before she gets home." "Next, I'm going to see Kate," I said sadly. She deserves to know the truth. I'll wait for her at her dentist appointment, ask her to get coffee, and just tell her everything straight up. Sherry empathized. That's going to be tough. That night, I tried to act as normal as I could. When Elizabeth got home, she went in for a big hug, a gesture of affection I hadn't expected. I tried to not let my inner turmoil show. "What's wrong with you today?" I asked gently. She smiled, knowingly. "It's been over a week since we last had sex. I think we need to make up for lost time." So then she planted a passionate kiss on my lips. I thought for a moment. If Elizabeth had accidentally gotten something from Isaac, then I had it too. We didn't use condoms because she was on the pill, and I didn't have any reason to say no to a night of passion at this point. I remembered a story I'd read where a husband felt using as a cheating wife like a cheap commodity was a form of revenge. That night, we had sex. Multiple times. I don't know what I was trying to prove, but deep down I felt like I was getting even in some twisted way. Thursday morning, Elizabeth woke me up by giving me a blowjob, something she had never done before. As she left, I knew I had done what I had to do. It was time for this life to go in a different direction. I knew today would be a tough day for Elizabeth, and probably a painful one for both of us. After she left the house, I started packing up my things. I had planned to check into the hotel early, so I started packing, organizing everything neatly. I had booked the hotel for the entire weekend, giving me time to think and settle things down. While I was packing, I sorted some things I wouldn't need immediately and called my dad. He agreed to come over and help me move them. My belongings fit neatly into 2 large suitcases in about 5 boxes. After my dad helped me move everything, I left the apartment, feeling empty, and went to the hotel. Everything was moved into the hotel before the lawyer notified me that Elizabeth had officially been served with the divorce papers. I knew her first call would come sooner or later, so I left my phone on. And as expected, just a few minutes later, my phone buzzed incessantly. She called me 5 times in a row, each call accompanied by pleading text messages, begging me to believe she wasn't cheating. I didn't answer any of her calls, nor did I respond to any of her messages. After a while, the barrage of text messages started, long and desperate, but I just silently waited. I sent her 5 pictures I had printed from her video with Isaac. No message, just the images. Immediately, all the calls and messages stopped. A heavy feeling settled in. By sending those pictures, I had ended any pretense and attempts at justification on her part. Once the lawyer confirmed that the papers had been delivered, I knew I had to complete the final step in my plan. See Kate. I walked 3 blocks to the dentist's office, nervous but determined. I was sure Elizabeth would have called Kate, but she wouldn't have told Kate the truth about what happened. And painful as this was, Kate deserved to know. I sat in a nearby coffee shop, trying to prepare myself. I looked down at my phone, waiting for Kate to finish her appointment. I wasn't sure what I would say or how she would react, but I knew I had to talk to her before she heard a twisted version from Elizabeth or Isaac. It was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary. I arrived just in time, as Kate was walking out of the building. "Kate." I called her name, my voice urgent. She turned around, eyes blazing with anger. "You bastard. Leave me alone," she yelled. Clearly, Elizabeth had said something to her, enough to make her think I was the one to blame. "Wait, before you go to Elizabeth, we need to talk. Give me 5 minutes, please," I pleaded, my voice trembling with desperation. Kate glared at me. "What the hell do you have to say to me that I would even care?" she yelled, anger shaking her shoulders. I took a deep breath. "She's been cheating," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. Kate was confused. "What?" she asked, a look of surprise flashing across her face. "Elizabeth has been cheating," I said slowly, as if trying to stretch out the moment to lessen the pain. "With Isaac." She stood there for a few seconds, as if unable to process what I had just said. I could see the shock in her eyes slowly morph into hurt and betrayal. "Are you sure?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment acutely. "Okay, let's sit down and get a coffee, and I'll tell you everything," I said, pointing towards a nearby coffee shop. Kate didn't say anything, just nodded, following me like a lost person in her own life. We sat down. I told Kate everything I had discovered, from Isaac's coin to the video from the hidden camera. I didn't go into detail about Sherry yet, that could wait. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed pictures from the video. Kate stared at them for a moment, tears welling in her eyes. When I offered to show her the video, she shook her head, not wanting to see anything more. Finally, she burst into tears, and I could only sit silently, gently putting my arm around her in an attempt to comfort her. The fallout from the truth was unpredictable. Elizabeth seemed to want to cut off all contact with Isaac after being exposed, and she didn't put up a fight about the divorce. She also asked to transfer to a different city to avoid facing Isaac at work. Everything moved quickly. She was out of town by the end of the next weekend. Eventually, after everything settled down, I was able to move back into my apartment. I felt like I was standing in the ruins of a once peaceful life, but at least I was starting to pick up the pieces and move on. As for Kate, she completely cut off her relationship with Isaac after learning the truth. She kicked him out of their apartment, but he wasn't easy to get rid of. He showed up drunk several times, banging on the door and begging to see Kate, hoping to fix things. Isaac's appearances made Kate uneasy. When I moved back into my apartment, Kate decided to move in with me for safety. I gave her my bedroom and slept on the sofa in the living room. Isaac eventually faced the reality that Kate wanted nothing more to do with him. After a long time of getting nowhere, he gave up and sent her divorce papers. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had filed a complaint against Isaac with the company's HR department, accusing him of harassment. Combined with the rumors circulating about Isaac's other women, after Sherry's public performance at the restaurant, Isaac saw that his situation at work was unsalvageable. He decided to leave town for a fresh start and was lucky to find another company willing to take him on. I didn't care about their reasons for cheating or their apologies. For me, those justifications meant nothing. However, in a required meeting to finalize the divorce proceedings, Kate asked Isaac why they had done it. Isaac, maybe feeling he finally had to tell the whole story, admitted it had started more than a year earlier. Initially, back in college, Isaac had a major crush on Elizabeth. He admitted they never really considered what they'd missed out on. When they both ended up working together, those feelings resurfaced. They decided to give it a try, see what it felt like, and that quickly turned into a secret relationship. Because they worked together, they didn't need secret calls or texts. Everything was hidden through work messages and conversations at the office. Every Tuesday, a brief work message was enough to signal that the coast was clear for Isaac to go to our apartment. They chose to use Elizabeth and my apartment as their meeting spot because Kate was so organized and meticulous, they feared she would easily spot signs if they cheated in her apartment. According to Isaac, they planned to keep this relationship going until we saved enough to buy a house and settle down. But as everyone knows, you can't trust cheaters. Isaac's justifications only made everything more meaningless and bitter. 3 years later, Kate and I were unloading boxes from a moving truck. We both received 50% of the house savings after finalizing the divorce proceedings. With the additional savings we had accumulated over the past 3 years, we finally had enough money to buy a house, and now, the growing baby in Kate's belly made that house complete. After the major life blows, both Kate and I had spent time in post-divorce counseling. Initially separately and then together, we had worked through our pain and trauma to build a life again. Through long conversations about trust and deep wounds, Kate and I started to understand each other more. Gradually, I moved back from the sofa in the living room to my bedroom, and our relationship became more intimate and stronger. Going through shared pain and joy together, we moved past what had happened with Isaac and Elizabeth and focused on new, happy memories. One day, as Kate and I were preparing dinner, she chuckled, placing her hand on her belly and saying, "Do you think it will look like me or its dad?" I smiled, looking at her affectionately. "Hopefully it'll look like you," I replied, "so the world can have another amazing girl." So we talked about getting married for a while, but the lovely surprise growing in Kate's belly pushed us to cross that line and turn that promise into a reality. So our wedding was simple, with just close friends like Sherry and her family attending. Sherry, the friend who had been with us through the hardest times, couldn't hold back tears as she watched the two of us walk down the aisle. Our new house was near Sherry's, and her oldest daughter was now old enough to babysit for us. On weekends, when Kate and I wanted a break and went to watch Sherry perform at her little theater, we could relax knowing Sherry's reliable daughter was taking care of our little one. One night, after watching Sherry perform a lighthearted, charming comedy, she invited us backstage. "This definitely isn't the best performance I've ever done," Sherry laughed. Kate laughed, and I did too. We all knew her best performance was at that restaurant 3 years ago, a performance that completely changed my life and Kate's. Isaac and Elizabeth were no longer a significant part of our story. None of us knew where they were or what their lives were like. We didn't spend any thought on them. Honestly, we didn't care. The only thing that mattered to us now was the bright future we were statisticing so, a small family with a baby on the way, and a warm home filled with love. Kate gently placed her hand on her belly as we crossed the threshold of our new house. She turned to me, her eyes filled with happy tears, and I felt incredibly lucky to have this family. "We'll be okay," I said, taking her hand. "We'll be happy." And so, with each step, we moved into a hopeful future, leaving all the heartache and betrayal in the past. We weren't just building a house, we were building a life, a family, and a happiness that nothing could break. Life after the storm was, surprisingly, peaceful. The initial shockwaves of betrayal and heartbreak had subsided, leaving behind a quiet understanding of the strength we both possessed. We'd learned to trust each other in a way we hadn't before, a trust built not on the absence of doubt, but on the foundation of shared experience and resilience. Our little one, a beautiful baby girl named Lily, arrived a few months later, filling our lives with a joyful chaos that eclipsed the darkness of the past. Kate was a natural mother, nurturing and patient, while I found myself surprisingly adept at changing diapers and singing lullabies. It was as if fatherhood had been waiting in the wings, a role I never knew I craved. As Lily grew, so did our love for her and for each other. Our home was a haven, a sanctuary from the outside world, where laughter and warmth replaced the coldness of betrayal. Kate and I found new rhythms in our lives, sharing the responsibilities of parenting, building a family, and finding joy in the little things. We created new traditions, celebrating holidays with Sherry and her family, who were always there to lend a helping hand. So our little girl thrived in their care, and we found a sense of community in the shared laughter and stories. Every evening, after tucking Lily into bed, Kate and I would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and orange. We'd share stories, dreams, and anxieties, our connection deepening with each passing day. We both still worked at the same company, but the atmosphere felt different. Elizabeth had moved on, leaving behind a vacuum of hurt and uncertainty. We both decided to take a few months off work to be with Lily, relishing the precious moments of her infancy. Life wasn't always easy. We encountered challenges like every family, but we faced them together. We learned to communicate more effectively, to listen and to empathize. The shared experience of healing and growth had strengthened our bond in a way we never thought possible. Years passed, and Lily grew into a lively, curious child. Kate continued to shine in her career, and I, spurred by a newfound sense of purpose, took on more leadership roles at work. We'd occasionally run into Isaac and Elizabeth at company events, but their encounters were polite and uneventful. The betrayal had faded into a distant memory, a painful chapter that no longer held any power over us. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Lily excitedly telling us about her day at school, Kate looked at me with a smile that warmed my heart. "Remember that crazy time when we almost lost everything?" she asked, a twinkle in her eyes. "I'd rather not," I replied, a chuckle escaping my lips, "but I'm glad we came out stronger on the other side." "Me too," she agreed, squeezing my hand. "We found our way back to each other, and we built a family. We're stronger, wiser, and so much happier. And we have Lily, our incredible little miracle." I looked at our daughter, giggling, as she dipped her mashed potatoes in her gravy. She was a constant reminder of the love and resilience that had brought us together, a testament to the fact that even through the darkest storms, a new dawn can always emerge.